You have questions? We have answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box with your host, Miss Lindsay Schiss.
Welcome back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box, where we are here to tackle your tough questions, both relational and therapeutic questions, hopefully with insight and empathy. Today I have with me Whitney Evans, who is a friend and fellow therapist at Therapy Utah. Thanks for joining us, Whitney.
Thank you for having me.
So Whitney, tell us a little bit, how are you feeling about being here on the podcast today?
I am really excited to be here. And that actually is a little bit of a surprise to me and a relief to me.
It's actually a surprise to me too.
Yeah, I've been nervous about this, and you know that. We've talked about that.
Yeah. So what changed for you?
What changed is recognizing really my motive and my goal for being here. I'm excited about this topic. It is relevant in my personal life. I see it regularly in my office as a therapist, and I think it's a really important topic.
Nice.
I'm excited to discuss it. That's my motive.
Okay.
Rather than how's this going to be received? Who is going to hear this? What's going to happen as a result of this being out on the internet?
Right. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. And I'm with you. I think this topic, and the topic today is jealousy. We're going to be talking about jealousy. And we had a listener write in a question, and we'll just go ahead and launch right into it. Okay. And I'm with you. I think it has implications for all of us. And I think we've all felt these emotions before, and sometimes it's hard to talk about them. So we'll jump right in. Here's the question. Hi. Can you please discuss jealousy on the podcast, specifically with dear friends, making new friends, and how logically this is always okay, but emotionally it feels like getting replaced? I'd love some advice on the matter. So to start out, Whitney, do you see this in the therapy office?
Yes.
Is it overt? Are people saying I'm jealous or not?
Not usually.
Okay.
No. It usually comes out after some deeper exploration and after some time where a client is feeling a little bit more comfortable with our therapeutic relationship, but also more comfortable and safe with their capacity to really look at and talk about hard emotions.
Okay.
Jealousy is one of the emotions that we cover up the best.
I was just going to say that. Do you think it comes out later because we cover it up or because it's a lack of awareness?
I think both.
Okay.
Yep.
Why do we cover it up?
Because it elicits a lot of shame. We think, oh, what is wrong with me that I would feel this way? Or we're confused by it. I'm not an insecure person. I don't think I struggle with self-esteem. Why am I feeling this way? Or what would other people think about me if they know I felt this way? Or, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm 12 years old again in junior high. What does that say about me?
Yes. So there's so much of this, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Something's wrong, the fact that I feel this way, right? Yeah. I can relate to that. I know when I have felt jealous, I've thought, I'm actually really embarrassed that I feel jealous. And I think this is a me problem and what's wrong with me, as opposed to sitting in some curiosity about it.
Yeah, you can really hear the shame
in
100%. In those messages, in those beliefs about ourselves.
But why is it? Why is it like, I mean, there's a lot of emotions that we have. Why is jealousy one of those that feels so shameful? Is it what it says about me? Is it that I should be better? I should be more mature? What is it?
I think that's a big part of it, our value, our worth, who and how we are. But I think there's other elements of shame that we don't recognize or talk about as often. One of those is I'm not safe. Safety and our belief that I'm unsafe, I'm powerless, I can't create safety for myself, I'm in danger. That is a form of shame. That is a belief that is not true, but feels very real. And with jealousy, it has its roots in attachment.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to that. I think that's really important to understand that it feels like something's being threatened.
Yes.
There's a threat there.
It is a threat.
Right.
And when something is threatening our very security and our attachment, and as human beings, our attachments are the primary drivers.
So in this question, can an attachment be a close friend? Like it's not necessarily a parent or a partner.
No, it's any relationship that matters to us. In the question, she used the describe her dear friend.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's an important attachment. And when that gets threatened, that can be very scary. Now, if it's hitting us at such a deep level that we feel very afraid and unsafe, then it's likely that we could go back further in one's life and see that actually this probably stems from something that happened with a parent or with a primary caregiver earlier in life, when our mental and emotional attachments were as important as our physical attachments for survival.
Interesting. So this could be what's going on with this friendship, but it could be based in something historical.
A little deeper and a little further back.
This is why this is so complicated, right? Because there might be a threat. As this listener is saying, it might threaten the closeness of this friendship. It actually might change the relationship.
Good.
So that's feels
very real.
Real and hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do you suggest, like as I'm thinking about this, what do you suggest this person does in terms of, you have these feelings, there's jealousy, but there's probably some shame around it, maybe some embarrassment. What do you suggest this listener does? Like, I know I'm just like laying it out there, but what do you think?
That's such a great question. I wonder if before we get to what do we do with it, can we maybe describe a difference between something that I think gets tangled up and confused, the difference between jealousy and envy.
Okay.
They are different emotions.
Absolutely.
And they come from different places. Would it be all right?
Yeah, I'd love that.
So jealousy is relational. Jealousy is an emotion that we experience in relationships. And jealousy requires at least 3 people. The primary relationship, me and my friend, and then somebody else or somebody's else, right? It can be multiple people. Envy is when we experience somebody else's achievement, something they have that we wish we have, some experience in their life, right? That's a little bit different than jealousy. And they feel differently in the body.
So envy is more like, I'm envious of that person's house.
Yeah.
That's envy. That's not
envy.
jealousy.
That's not jealousy.
So jealousy is really more about relationships.
About relationships.
Okay.
And attachment.
Okay.
Right?
And envy is more situational and non-relational.
Yes. There are some relational components to it because we most frequently tend to experience envy with people who are closest to us in life experience. Coworkers, right? We have a lot of similarities. Friends, we usually have quite a bit in common and that we can compare between friends. Siblings, neighbors.
Yes.
Right? So there are some relational components to it.
That makes sense.
And it's not necessarily that threat of attachment that we experience in jealousy.
So why is it important, the distinction between the two?
Because sometimes we'll feel shame that we're experiencing jealousy when really what we're experiencing is envy. And envy can actually be, and jealousy can be too, we'll get to that. Envy can actually be an adaptive emotion. Envy can show us what matters to us, what we value, what our goals and dreams are, what we wish we had.
Isn't that so interesting that it is not a negative thing? It actually is showing us it's giving us information.
And that is so important to highlight. Our emotions, jealousy, envy, anger, whatever the emotion, they're just bringing us information. They're messengers.
Gosh, if we could view emotions as information messengers, gosh, wouldn't we deal with them differently? We, instead of going into shame, going into judgment about them for ourselves or others, to just say, you know what, this is information. Something's going on here.
Yeah.
And I need to maybe sit in some curiosity here.
There you go.
Hard to do that.
It is really hard to do that. So so now what do we do with this jealousy?
Yeah, what strategies?
The first thing is to become aware of that emotion in one's body. How do I know that I'm jealous? What is that feeling? How do I feel it head to toe? Maybe it's a sensation, right? Do my hands clench? Does my jaw clench? Maybe my cheeks flush and I feel heat. Maybe my stomach gets upset. Or maybe my heart starts to race because that's scary. I'm feeling threatened here. We get to know that emotion of jealousy.
Okay.
And then we practice some self-compassion with that emotion.
Yes.
And work on normalizing it. Well, of course I feel jealous here.
There's a reason.
There's
Makes
a reason.
sense. Yeah.
And even if we don't know what that reason is, that's where, as you're suggesting, let's just get curious. What might be happening here that I'm feeling this emotion?
I love that you first started with the body sensation, because I think our body, again, The Body Keeps the Score, a book that we have talked about multiple times, is a really good, it talks a lot about how our body will tell us what's going on, right? But sometimes we're so used to just ignoring our body.
We don't
we're
listen
like,
to it.
It's fine.
Because it's painful. It's uncomfortable.
Yes.
And most of us believe that I shouldn't feel pain, or I can't feel pain. Right? I'm not safe feeling pain.
Yes. So we try to ignore it. We try to ignore it. But if we're aware of it and we tune into it, it can give us, again, information.
Yes.
Good. Okay.
And this matters, that first step, in any emotion.
Amen.
Regulating any emotion. We first need to get aware in the body how we're experiencing this emotion.
Great. Okay. So awareness in the body, how we're experiencing the emotion. What would you say is next?
Number 2, it's important to distinguish the difference between the jealous feelings that are in the body. Those are natural. They're going to come. Just like weather comes. We can't control the weather. We don't control our emotions. But we pay attention. Okay, what's the weather doing outside? Oh, it's raining. So I'm not going to go sit outside and have that picnic that I was planning, right? It can inform our behavior. But we're just going to allow the emotion to be what it is.
Okay. Allow it. Can we just talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
Before we move on, I really think allowing it is key, because we don't want to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so what do? We get on our phones, we try to numb it some other way, we get distracted instead of allowing it and sitting with it in curiosity. That time between feeling it, that sensation, and the allowance of it is so important. And I think we skip that so often.
So quickly we skip that.
Yeah, because we don't want to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it's getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's literally healing, practicing healing our relationship to pain.
Oh my gosh, we could do a whole topic on that, because that's a big one.
Yeah.
Because we have been taught to avoid those uncomfortable feelings, and it's not okay to feel pain or uncomfortable. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Excellent.
We want to distinguish the feeling from the thoughts, and then further from the behaviors. What are the jealous thoughts? And what are the jealous behaviors? They're different. Those are all very distinctly different.
Okay, so we want to distinguish between the feelings that we have in the body, the thoughts we have in our mind, and our behaviors.
Yeah.
Okay, that takes some real introspection as well.
It does.
Okay, what am I feeling? Then what am I thinking?
Yeah.
And then now how am I behaving because of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or how am I wanting to behave because of it? Or how have I behaved in the past because of it?
Because of it. So we're, again, sitting in curiosity,
We're looking inside with an emotion that usually makes us want to look outside.
Yes. Amen, right? Why do we want to look outside?
Because we want to control it.
Yeah.
We want to control what we don't understand. And so we'll look outside first.
Yes.
To try to understand something.
Is it because we also want to blame too? Or play, like we don't want to,
for sure.
It's harder to take responsibility. For me. It's easier to say, you know what? Well, of course, look at the way that she showed up or did X, Y, Z.
Exactly.
So I'm justified in that. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I like that idea of understanding our feelings, recognizing our thoughts around it, and then how am I behaving around it? And what you said is helpful, that we can go back in the past and say, this is what I have done when I have felt jealous in the past, but just awareness of this, really helpful. Okay, what else?
Just awareness. And then number 3, then once we've practiced validating and allowing that emotion, and we've been able to practice some self-empathy and some self-compassion.
Can we talk about what that might look like?
Yeah,
like, can you tell me, because again, validating ourselves, I think it's so much easier to validate other people.
So much easier.
Right?
Yeah.
How do we validate ourselves? How do we show forth compassion to this emotion that often is so riddled in shame?
Yeah. So Dr. Kristen Neff, I love her model of mindful self-compassion. She talks about 3 different things that we can do to practice that self-empathy. Number 1 is getting aware of it, right? Again, just noticing it in the body. Number 2 is speaking to ourselves kindly the way that we would speak to a friend, right? Lindsay, you would never tell me are you serious, Whitney? You're jealous? What is wrong with you? You would never say that to me.
No.
I would never say that to you, but I will tell myself that really easily.
Is that the truth?
Yeah. So we practice, first of all, hearing our internal self-talk, getting aware of how we're speaking to ourselves about the shame, and then changing that. That goes to the thoughts of jealousy, right? We can change and reframe.
So can you give us an example of a change and a reframed jealous thought? Do you have any thoughts on that? You have any examples that you could give me? Like, what's a jealous thought that a person could have, and how could we reframe that?
Yeah. So I find out that my dear friend has made another friend, and they went to dinner on Friday night, and I wasn't invited. I found out about it after the fact. So my initial feeling in my body is, I can even feel it now a little bit in my stomach, right? Oh, my stomach drops. And then I can identify that my knee-jerk reaction is to think that, I'm not good enough. I'm not fun enough. Or she's maybe embarrassed of me and she didn't want me to introduce me to her new friend, right? Those are all thoughts that I'm now having about myself.
Right.
Or I knew it. That's evidence, right? Sometimes we'll believe that those kinds of choices that other people made are evidence that prove our shame beliefs.
Isn't that true?
Yeah. So when I recognize that internal self-talk, instead of telling myself, I'm not good enough as a friend, or I'm boring to be around, right? I'm going to switch that up and I'm going to change the narrative in my head. And I like to start with questions. Instead of making a statement about what that means, I'm going to ask myself some questions. I wonder what her decision is based in, right? So I'm not going to try to get in her head and read her thoughts, but asking that question to myself opens up a whole lot of options and possibilities.
I love that.
Rather than my confirmation bias that this proves that I'm not a good enough friend to meet the new friend and go to dinner.
But asking questions.
Because
then it opens it up instead of this is what it is, this is black and white. Wait, there's a lot of things that might be going on here. Yeah. As you were talking about self-compassion, it made me think of a situation I had several months ago where I felt some jealousy. And I immediately went to, this is ridiculous. Why would you feel this way? This is so stupid. Oh my gosh. I had this negative self-talk, a lot of shame. And I took a moment, and again, I've done some work around this, right? And I help people with this. But I took a moment and I literally just put my hand on my heart and just in my head just said, it makes sense. It makes sense why this feels hard and this feels threatening. And I'm telling you, it changed so drastically. My stomach was in knots. I felt so uptight and stressed. It totally changed. And it was that moment of having some self-compassion. And no one knew it. No one knew what was going on. No one knew what I was experiencing or how I was showing self-compassion to myself. But it was I go back to that moment often because it changed how I felt about my experience, as opposed to this is ridiculous and you know better and you're fine. It was no, actually it makes sense and you're okay. And I just feel that self-compassion is such an important piece of this that often just gets skipped over because we're not used to providing ourselves with compassion.
Yeah. You can hear the validation and the empathy in those new words. Of course I feel this way. No wonder I'm experiencing this in my body.
Yep. You can hear it. And you can feel it when it feels genuine. So really helpful. I love that idea of validation. And, I'm wondering if there is any, as you think about this, how normal is it that we feel jealous in friendships or relationships?
It is very normal. And by normal, I mean common.
Yes.
It is very common. It is a normal reaction that we experience when anything feels threatening, when an attachment feels threatening. Now, if it's happening at a level that's starting to interfere with our daily functioning, if it's happening at a level where we are really struggling to maintain our values, and by values, I'm talking about thoughts and behaviors, then it's worth taking a closer look at, though this is a normal experience, is there something that I could explore?
Yes.
That's happening inside of me that is creating thoughts and behaviors beyond the feeling that are interrupting relationships, interrupting my peace,
Yes.
interrupting my capacity to sleep. Is this waking me up at night? Right? Then we're going to take a closer look at where are the roots.
And that's where I think support of a therapist would come into play.
Yes.
Because it's hard to do that on your own when it's tied to some other emotional or historical things, right? And I like that awareness that if it is interrupting some of your values and your behaviors, your sleep, then we might need to dig a little deeper here and see what's really going on.
And let's see
what's going on.
For sure.
It's also an indicator to me as I'm listening to this listener question, how important this relationship is, as opposed to looking at it like, oh, this is a horrible feeling, or I shouldn't be feeling this way. Like, actually, I am attached to this person. This person and this relationship does matter so much that this is what I'm experiencing.
And that's one way we can practice self-compassion with that feeling. We can change it from our belief that this is maladaptive, that I'm having this emotion, I'm broken, something's wrong with me, to actually, this is an adaptive emotion. It shows us what matters to us. It can show us our heart, our connections, our desires.
Gosh, that reframe that you just did in and of itself is so powerful. Like, this actually isn't maladaptive. It's an adaptive response. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Of course it is, because this is how I care deeply. And it feels threatened for some reason. So that's my body giving me information. Thank you. Yeah. Everything's working perfectly it should, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
That's so mindfully self-compassionate. There's a third component to that capacity to be self-compassionate, which is what Dr. Neff calls common humanity. It's not just me.
Yes.
Anybody in my shoes with what I've experienced would be feeling the same way. I'm not the only one.
Isn't that true? When we know we're not the only one, when we normalize things, it all of a sudden, it's like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, it's a big, deep breath, isn't it?
Big weight off of one's shoulders.
Yes. The normalizing an experience. I think that's why when we talk to our friends and they say, oh my gosh, I get that. It makes sense. Or you all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, I'm not alone in this. Somebody else has felt this way, walked this path. I'm not crazy. I'm not losing it. Whatever it is, right? It feels okay. And also that they're on the other side of it. Yeah. Like that it's not going to feel this way forever. I love that. So Whitney, is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you feel like is important in this conversation around jealousy?
I would love to talk a little bit about being on the other side of someone else's jealous feelings. Would that be all right?
Yeah.
So I also considered the friend in this situation on the other side of the jealousy. This is a dear friend, and it sounds like a relationship that really matters. It's important to go to that friend if the relationship really matters and practice being honest about the jealousy. When someone comes to you with that kind of vulnerability and honesty, we have an opportunity to practice receiving that vulnerability in a safe way, because they're struggling with something that has threatened their sense of safety in the relationship. So, number one, empathizing with that feeling, validating it for them. Oh, no wonder you're feeling that. Or, oh, I must really mean a lot to you that you're feeling this. Thank you for letting me see how dear I am to you.
Okay, can I ask you a question? Gosh, how do you do that? Because what if it feels like, again, I guess it's the way the person is bringing it up.
For sure.
Right? But that you could feel very defensive.
For sure.
Right? Like the idea of saying, gosh, that makes sense, and it means that you care about me, I think is wonderful. However, I think that would be really challenging to do if you came to me and said, I feel like you're spending more time and you're ignoring me. I could get really defensive really quickly. Right? As opposed to going to compassion for you. So how do I not get defensive?
Thank you for asking that, which is why I think it's so important to talk about this.
Yes.
Because being on the other side of it is so hard.
Totally.
So can we go back to the example that you used? You, for yourself, put your hand on your chest You told yourself something true. I'm okay. You empathized. No wonder I'm feeling this way. And it grounded you.
Yeah.
We can practice doing that on the other side of somebody's painful emotion. I can put my hand on my heart, take a nice deep breath, and I can practice separating me from you. That your pain and your struggle with this is not me. And it can help to literally touch oneself, to recognize the borders and edges.
If you can't see what Whitney's doing, she's hugging herself right now, putting her hands around her arm.
My body ends here.
Yeah.
Everything else starts there. And that helps me to untangle my emotions from my friend's emotions.
I love that. And that requires a pause.
It does.
That requires to take a beat and to take a moment and to say, okay, I can take a minute and I can ground myself, because that actually felt hard to hear.
Right.
And that's okay that it feels hard to hear. And to take a moment, and then you can sit in that place.
Yeah. Notice how you're practicing those same steps.
Yeah, exactly.
Being aware of that feeling. Ooh, that hit me hard. And now my body's feeling defended.
Yep.
And practicing acknowledging it and then allowing it.
And that might be a minute before we can circle back to say, you know what, I'm in a place where I can have empathy and compassion for how you're feeling.
Yeah. It's always okay to take that minute. I call it the power of a pause. It's okay to say, oof, that felt a certain way.
Yeah.
I need a second.
Feels hard. I actually have on my keychain a comma. And it is really for that reminder to a comma is a break, a comma is a pause, a comma is a breath. And that reminder to just take a breath, just take a minute, because I can take it, you can, I can allow it for you. But that reminder in our crazy busy life to take a pause. So I love that. Good. So any other thoughts on how we can receive a person who is struggling?
Once you're feeling that capacity to empathize and just let them feel how they're feeling, it never works for us to say, oh, you just need to trust me. Don't be jealous, right? There we go, invalidating that feeling. Rather, we practice that empathy. No wonder you're feeling this way. And by the way, please feel free to keep talking to me about this, right? Then we talk about making agreements in the relationship. How is this going to look now that we both know, and this is on the table in our relationship? What does this look like moving forward? Is it okay to keep talking about it? In what context? Where, when, how is it okay to talk about? And what are we each going to do on both sides of this relationship to create some safety for one another?
I love that. And, as you're talking, I think this could be an opportunity for this relationship to deepen and expand.
This can deepen relationships.
Yes.
Yes. Just a word of warning. This can also clarify relationships that aren't going to make it.
That makes sense. So awareness of that, and that it may go one way or the other. And we don't actually get to control that.
And I call this a golden parachute moment.
Tell me about that.
Where if we get aware of this feeling, we practice reframing our thoughts, and we choose to try new behaviors as a result of this feeling, we're taking a risk. We need a golden parachute. And we need to remember that that parachute is what is going to keep us safe, not the person on the other side of the relationship. That's my own sense of self. It's my own recognition of my value, that I do have relationships in my life that matter and that are safe enough that I can trust with this kind of vulnerability and openness, that I have skills, that I'm grown up, right? Part of this is remembering I'm an adult now. I've got skills. I've got autonomy. There are things that I can practice doing differently.
That's so good.
Than when I was younger and maybe really felt out of control of this emotion.
I love that idea, because then it doesn't feel like the stakes are so high that it's not even worth it. I can't do it, because it's actually like, wait, there are these other areas and elements in my life and of safety, and I don't have control of this outcome, but I choose to show up in honesty, and here we go. I love that, the golden parachute. Never heard of that. I love that. Well, to recap, I just want to go through a couple of things that we talked about. That jealousy is relational, and that our first step is awareness in our body, that our body will tell us when something's off, to pay attention to our body. I love the idea of distinguishing between feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, and understanding how jealousy can show up in those things, and questioning those things. Wait a minute, why am I thinking this? Why am I behaving in this way, right? And then self-validation, right? Offering loving kindness to ourselves as we're experiencing this. I also appreciated the ideas that you shared about when we get feedback that maybe somebody is feeling jealous, and to again, regulate. What do we need to do to get in a regulated place so we can show up in a place of compassion? And again, I think at the end of the day, the goal is the relationship. We want to have this relationship, right? And so what can we do to strengthen this relationship? Well, Whitney, I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Such an important topic, one that we all experience. And I just appreciate you normalizing it and understanding that, these hard conversations are worth it. They're worth the relationships, and they're worth, there's so much work we can do on our own selves as we work through these things, that we learn and grow from these things, instead of shying away from them or pushing them down or being in shame around them, but to get curious about it, to sit in some of this, and that we'll make it through. The golden parachute. I love that idea. It was excellent. So thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, take care.